Hello, students. You're welcome to today's lesson on post-colonial and cultural themes as one of the themes and social-political context in African drama. In other words, post-colonial and cultural themes in African drama. In order to exemplify this, we would be using two major plays. These are Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo and The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka, so that you can have a full, better understanding of these two concepts in African drama and excel excellently in whatever examination that you might be preparing for. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and stay tuned. I am Ramesa Adeyemo from English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. So, in this video, we want to learn the themes in African drama. So, first of all, what are post-colonial and cultural themes in African drama? We need to understand each concept before we even go into the African drama to analyze it. So, first of all, what is a theme? As a student of literature, you commonly say theme, theme. I want to look out for the theme of this book, or what are the theme in this point. So let's go into detail into what a theme is. So themes are the major issues depicted in a play. A theme is a universal central idea or underlying message depicted or explored in a literary work. So, what do I mean by this? Literature, you need to understand that literature is an intentional effort by whoever it is that is writing it to portray issues, to portray social issues. So themes allows both authors and readers to explore timeless questions, concepts, issues, experience and perspectives about existence, morality and society. That is, it gives us an avenue to recreate our story as human beings. It gives us an avenue to recreate our experience. So, whatever it is that you are reading in a literary text, it is an intentional effort by a particular author to show the world what is actually happening in another part of the world. So, if somebody betrays someone and you're able to pick out, oh, this is a theme of betrayal, it is an intentional effort by the author to portray that betrayal. So, themes reflect shared human experiences which make literature a mirror to our world and a window to others. So, there's this common definition that literature is a mirror that mirrors to society. So when we say it mirrors our world, sometimes when you read a text, you can relate. You can relate to a particular character. It is just like you are reading your own story again. But sometimes it is not something that you can relate to it directly. But by reading it, you can understand that, oh, some people are actually going through this. This is the experience of some people. So it gives you an avenue or it gives you a window into other people's world. So it is from these human experiences, human psychology, that we are able to pick out what different themes. So now, what is socio-political context in literature? What do we mean by socio-political context? So, socio-political context in literature is simply the intersection of social, political, economic, as well as cultural conditions and experience of a group of people, which usually serve as the basis for works of literature. So, for example, now we are talking about African literature here. So, any book that is going to qualify as what African literature has to be portraying socio-political experience of Africa. Are you following? So one of our political experience is colonialization. We were colonized. We have our way of ruling each other. We have our political experience before we were colonized. We have it during colonization, and we had it after colonization. Are you following? So one of the the central theme in an African play is going to be what? This colonization. So it examines how a literary text reflects, critiques, or engages the power structure, ideologies, experience, and struggles of its time and place, which are usually formed from history and social norm. So this is just to tell you that whatever it is that the social political context we are talking about, it is the reality of a group of people. So because here we are talking about African drama, so I'm going to consider using African as an example. In Africa, we have our own norms, we have our values. Do you understand? Just like CD protected our virginity. So this is one of our values in Africa. So our plays is also supposed to do what? To portray these values, our social values, our political values. Sometimes we have social vices as well. So the plays should be able to do what? Portray our social vices, our political vices as well. Our plays should be able to do what? Should be able to portray it. Sometimes it might critique, or usually it's going to critique the vices. That is, it is going to portray it in a way that we would know that, okay, this author wants us to know that this is a vice that we need to work on. So it helps us to reflect. So when we talk about themes and social political context, we are talking about the content of a particular play, what the play is trying to tell us. So, what are themes and social political context in African drama? So, since now I want to believe you already understood themes and you already understood what we mean by social political context. Now, let's move on to the two African plays that we want to use to do what to exemplify these concepts. So, you also need to understand that Africans as Africa as a continent has its unique history, environment, experience, and norms, which greatly influence their perspectives. So this is just to tell you that when we want to look at themes and social political context, we are also looking out for the real African experience. Do you understand? The real African history, the real African norm, the real African values. So it is not just about reading a story. Oh, CD is the village belle, Lakunle is funny. Beyond that, behind all of what you can see at first, you need to think critically as you read any work of literature. What is this author trying to portray with this particular character? What is this author trying to portray with this particular dialogue? Do you understand? So there is always a content behind the surface. Thus, themes and social political context in African drama refers to the exploration of African unique experience, norm, history, values in African drama. So just like what I was explaining, you need to understand that there is a content. There is something behind the story. There is a message behind the story. Sometimes it might be the author satirizing uh, a particular vice, and it might be the author trying to show the world that, okay, maybe the world thinks that Africa is a place where nobody even has knowledge about anything. But, by creating a character that is aware, that wants to go for whatever he or she wants, the author will be telling the world that African also have what? Aspirations. So we also have our experience such as patriarchy, gender and social justice, tradition versus modernity. Because after we were colonized, a particular culture comes to us, and we also have our own native culture. So a lot of Africans struggle to strike a balance. Some people were so conservative that they only hold on to the traditional values. Some accept modernity mindlessly, such that there was not even no intelligence in what they were doing. Do you understand? So all of these struggles are the reality of Africans that are portrayed in African drama. So now let's look at these themes and socio-political context in Let Me Die Alone. So first you need to understand that Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo is a tragedy, and it's a powerful African drama that explores themes of power, betrayal, gender, and resistance in a traditional African setting. So I'm not here to tell you the story because here we want to analyze the themes and socio-political context. So let's go straight into that. Kakpo depicts African experiences such as African colonial experience, socio-political experience, and African leadership experience. So in the play, we have the Mende Kingdom that is ruled by African natives. So, however, they have an authority, which are the colonial masters, that is represented by Governor Rowe in the play. So, just by creating that kind of structure, you can imagine what the leadership structure looks like during the colonial era. Do you understand? So, by creating this kind of structure, Kagbo is trying to tell us or is trying to show us what the leadership structure looks like in the colonial era. So we also have other themes that could be and social context that could be identified in the play. So Mende Kingdom experienced colonial indirect rule, and Yoko is able to consolidate power and abide by their tax rules. However, she was eventually betrayed, and Governor Rowe asked her to surrender the kingdom. So, this is just to tell us what it actually looks like. Okay, now we already know the structure that there were um, natives that were also the chief. However, they still have to answer to the colonial masters who are the governors. Do you understand? So Yoko, however, is a powerful woman who challenged the norm to become the leader after the death of Baya. So now she did her best in the play, according to the play, to rule well. She had exceptional leadership skills and she was able to consolidate power. However, because of the local betrayal, African betrayal to one another, eventually she lost the throne. So we have from the play, from His Highness the Governor, south of Bandajuma, the 6 villages to the north of the Tabe River now belong to the people of the chiefdom of Bu. So this is the letter that was sent to her to claim uh, the small villages under the Mende kingdom from her. So this actually made her disappointed. She feels disappointed that she had been consolidating power, she had been cooperating with these colonial masters. But because she found herself in a conflict with her own people who were actually jealous of her, who wanted the throne by all means, not because she was evil, but because there is an internal conflict. So due to due to the disappointment she faced, she says, "Tell the governor that in all Ray years as ruler of this chiefdom, I have never been disgraced in this manner. Tell him the way he has decided on the boundary marks is a slap in the face of a lady who has been loyal to him all these years." So this can be seen on page 87. So this is to show that she's betrayed, she's disappointed, from ruling the kingdom, despite the fact that she did well. But because of the conflict, because of someone, Lamboy, who wants the throne by all means, who killed and then lied that it was Yoko that killed the innocent girl, and then the whole community believed him because she's a woman. She's not supposed to rule in an African society. So that is one of the African values. They believe that a woman does not have what it takes to rule. Do you understand? So the play also explores the experience of a female leader in a typical African patriarchy society where the woman is not what expected to lead. Do you understand? So these conflicts eventually lead to betrayal that results into the collapse of the traditional leadership structure. So she's not expected to lead. So it's easy for every member of the community to say, "Oh, she killed the girl to make sacrifice in order for her to remain in power." So the story looks believable to everybody because she is a woman who has decided to challenge the norm. So they started clamoring, they started protesting that she should leave the throne. Eventually, the governor asked her to surrender the whole throne, which leads to what? The collapse of the traditional leadership structure. So, what is the cause of this conflict and this collapse of the traditional leadership structure? It is caused by internal betrayal, African betrayal to one another. Because Lamboy, who did this to her, is also an African. But because Lamboy has his own internal greed, his own ruthless ambition, do you understand? He says, "I have started walking towards this throne now, towards the seat of supreme power on the road of blood, and there is no turning back." Pages 66 to 67. So he has his own what? Ruthless ambition. So here, Kagbo is trying to do what? To show us the socio-political context of African leadership. That just like every other man, just like every other continent, just like in any other group of people, there are people who are what? Who are evil. There are people who are greedy. There are people who had ruthless ambition, who would do anything to get what they want. Do you understand? Even if eventually they are not going to get it, they are still going to try. So, in order to get to the throne, Lamboy killed the first chief in the play, which is Chief Maya. He killed Geneva in order to do what? To defame Yoko and eventually get to the throne. So now let's look at themes and social political context in The Lion and the Jewel. So there is like a contrast. Let Me Die Alone is a tragedy, while The Lion and the Jewel is a what comedy. However, both plays are doing what? They are both portraying African experience. They are both exposing some vices in African community. They are both showing us some experience or some conflicts in African society. So The Lion and the Jewel is a humorous play that explores the clash between tradition and modernity in post-colonial Nigeria. Shoyinka critiques both blind adherence to tradition and mindless embrace of Western culture. So, after the post colonial experience, there is lots of conflicts, internal conflicts. Some people just embrace the Western culture mindlessly, forgetting their roots, forgetting that their origin is actually Africa and there's nothing they can do about that. Some people blindly adhere to only the tradition. So this leads to different kind of what conflicts. So Shoyinka satirizes clash of culture in post-colonial Africa. The play satirizes how some Africans conservatively embrace the traditional culture and how some mindlessly embrace modernism and how some struggle, do you understand, between actually accepting modernity and holding on to their what, to their tradition. CD, for example, is a character that depicts what tradition. However, she's also fascinated by some modern things like the way she's fascinated by the magazine. This is an element of modernism in the play. Even though she wants to get her bride price by all means, which means that she's a traditional woman, she is still fascinated. It's like it is a conflict for her whether for her to stay here or stay there. Even though eventually she picked tradition by getting married to the man who took her virginity, regardless of how it was taken. Are you following? Also, a character like Baroka is a traditional, conservative, traditional man. For example, he says, Guru Morin, Guru Morin. That is all we get from Alakowe. You call at his house helping to get some, but all you get is Guru Morin. Will Guru Morin wet my throat? So, by using the language, the English language like this, it shows that he's trying to satirize the Western culture because Lakunle is the element of what? The Western culture and ideology. But because Baraka has refused to speak the English language in this context correctly, in other places in the play, he could speak correctly. But this is actually the use of this language here shows us that Baraka is not welcoming this culture. He's saying that will that word my truth? That is, he's saying that he's trying to say that he is yet to understand any purpose of this culture. All Akunle does is just to speak English. Besides speaking English, what else can you do for us? Do you understand? So the play also depicts patriarchy in African society as Baraka keeps marrying more wives and Sadiku keeps supporting him. So in order for Shoyinka to create this character, he's trying to tell us the social norm in Africa that African men marry plenty wives. Baraka has lots of wives and he's still willing to marry Sidi, a young girl, even though he is at old. He's in his 60s already. He's still willing to marry a young girl, and his head wife, who is Sadiku, is also willing to help him woo the lady. So you can see what an African marriage structure looks like. Do you understand? A typical traditional African structure, marriage structure, what it looks like. So Shoinkaya is trying to portray what? The social context of Africa. Also, Shoyinka also depicts African value and norm as Sidi preserved her virginity and instead of collecting her bride price and insisted on collecting her bride price and marries Baraka even after he had taken advantage of her. So for Sidi to marry Baraka, insisting just because she lost her virginity to him, even though he took advantage of her, she didn't see it from that perspective because Sidi is a traditional woman. She's not a modern woman. Do you understand? It also exposes us to the value that Africans place on virginity. In traditional Africa, Africa believes that a woman should keep her virginity and should only give it to lose it to her husband alone. And it is only the man that took your virginity that is only lawful to get married to you. All of this does not really mean much in a modern society. Do you understand? So Shoyinka is trying to depict or show to the world who we are in that regard. So CD says, for example, why did you think that after him I could endure the touch of another man? Page 63. So let me just chip this in, students of literature. Whatever it is that you are writing, practice enough before the day of your exam. So whatever it is that you are writing, you should have a line. There should be some key lines that you would have committed to your memory that you can use to support your claim, to support whatever it is that you are saying. And as you're using the line, don't forget to always add the page to it. Are you following? So this is to show us who a typical African lady is in a traditional African society. It is not just about getting married for an African woman. It is about there's so much value on the bride price and virginity. You have to keep your virginity so that you can get the bride price. So if the bride price is not paid, the villagers or whoever is going to think that maybe you've lost your value. That is why you didn't collect your bride price. So traditional wins eventually, and city marries Baraka. Do you have any question? If you have any question, do not hesitate to ask. Kindly share this video with your friends who are also preparing for any literature examination. And do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more content on your examination, whether you're preparing for WAEC, JAMB, IGCSE, whatever exam you're preparing for. Thank you.